The Dharma, incomparably profound and exquisite, is rarely met with even in hundreds of thousands of millions of kalpas. We now can see it, hear it, accept and hold it. May we realize the true mind of the Tathagata. Today is day 1 of this 5-day Elder Sesshin here at Mountain Gate in March 2015. Although we call it an Elder Sesshin, it's not just for older people and it's not just for beginners, it's for everyone. And since we began giving these Elder Sesshin's, they have been strong, every single one of them. So there's a little bit more rest built in, but that's basically the only difference. I want to, because of this particular kind of Sesshin, speak first on this day 1 of early practice, beginning practice. We all come to practice through some level of discomfort. People who are feeling totally comfortable in their lives don't have any motivation to do anything different. But when we have pain or difficulty in our lives, then we're motivated to try to find a way out of it. And one of the most effective ways, in fact, the only effective way really to move beyond pain and suffering, is to do significant meditation. And generally speaking, in my experience, having become aware of various different types of meditation, including what's very popular right now, which is called mindfulness practice, is that Zen Buddhism, particularly Rinzai Zen Buddhism practice, goes far deeper than any of these other practices do, at least the ones that I've had any encounters with. And having done it for many decades myself, and observed over those decades not only my own practice, but also the transformation of people around me doing that practice and the transformation of my students, it is a highly effective practice. That said, it's going to take commitment and it's going to take work. Nothing is going to happen automatically for you. It's not like some forms of meditation where for 15 minutes you should sit in a comfortable position and in a comfy chair, close your eyes and just focus on a word for 15 minutes. This is very different. This is life transformative Zen practices, particularly, as I said, Rinzai Zen practice, because in Rinzai we expect that you will do your utmost. It may not feel like you're doing that. You may be aghast at what feels like limitations in your practice, but you keep plugging away and you will get there. No question asked about it. So why do we have pain and suffering? The Buddha, in his first, I guess you could call it Teisho, his first talk to anybody in terms of teaching, was about what are known nowadays as the Four Noble Truths. That, number 1, life is characterized by what is known as dukkha in Pali and Sanskrit, and which doesn't really have a very good translation into English, because apparently, from what we understand, it covers a whole range of possibilities, all the way from plain old boredom to deep anguish. And hopefully none of us have had the deep anguish end of the spectrum, but I would imagine that plenty of us had the boredom spectrum, and others moving closer to the anguish level. We've had things taken away from us that we didn't want to lose. We have not wanted to be in situations where we found ourselves. And of course, then there are what is known as the Four Mountains: birth, old age, sickness, and death. No one escapes the first and the last. Some people may escape the middle two. If you die young, of course, you won't experience old age. And some people are so healthy that they don't really get sick. But in general, pretty much everybody experiences one degree or another, or all 4 of those mountains to be climbed. So that is the characteristic of life, that it has the potential for being painful, for being difficult, for being uncomfortable, for being boring, and everything in between. Then, why do we have these things characteristic of life? The next noble truth is that life is characterized by dukkha because we hang on to things, or we try to hang on to things. We chase after pleasure and we try to avoid pain. And then the third noble truth is there actually is a way out of that. We can become free of dukkha. And the fourth noble truth is the way to go about it, which involves right mind states, basically, and right effort. And that involves practice, because we're not going to have it happen automatically. Practice here at Mountain Gate and at Hidden Valley Zen Center, our sister Sangha in California, is fundamentally the practice known as Susokan. We do teach koans, and koans are an important part of Rinzai Zen practice. They are to be chewed on and chewed on and chewed on, in most cases for years, before they can be fully revealed to us to the degree where we will be allowed to move on to the next koan by our teacher. And that is another thing to note, that it doesn't work to work on koans without a teacher. You can mislead yourself pretty seriously, for one thing. You can think you've passed a koan when you've come nowhere near. And it really takes the experience of a guide to work through them. You can get yourself very far misled if you try to do it on your own. Anyone working on koans here at Mountain Gate or at Hidden Valley Zen Center also works on the Susokan. The Susokan is a traditional Rinzai practice which involves extending the out-breath. The way it's done is to simply let yourself breathe out naturally, and then as you would be ready to turn around and breathe back in again, instead you push it out a little bit further. You don't reach a point of gasping, but you want to reach a point of pushing it out to the farthest extent wherein you are required to focus your mind on exactly that, and in the focus of your mind on exactly that, to let go of everything else. This is probably the most vital aspect of that practice. It is a fast track to letting go. And letting go, as we heard in the third noble truth, is the way to become free of suffering. Letting go does not mean denying. It doesn't mean sweeping the stuff under the carpet and trying to forget it. It doesn't mean dissociation. It means going right in there and allowing yourself what is known as radical acceptance of the moment just as it appears to be. As it appears to be. Now let's go back to when we were tiny children, perhaps many lifetimes ago, because each lifetime has brought more conditioning to us. We've had experiences, and we've drawn conclusions as a result of those experiences. This is called conditioning. And in this life, we're a tiny baby, and we're helpless. Older folks are taking care of us, and they take care of us in various different ways, depending on their own abilities and their own proclivities. And there will be very, very embracing, enlightened, really, in a sense, parents, and then there's the other end of the spectrum, which is anything but. It's interesting that in studies of people who've grown up in dire circumstances, essentially in the slums of inner cities, and investigations have been done to determine what made a difference between those people who sank into the debris of the slums, basically life-wise, ended up going into lives of crime, that kind of thing. And others who were able somehow to raise themselves above the situation and move on with a very different style of life. And what they discovered is that for the people who were able to move on in their lives, there was always someone, whether it was a parent, whether it was a teacher, whether it was a friend, whether it was, who knows, doesn't matter. There was someone there for that child at critical points in their life. And that someone who was there for that child was there in a very positive, embracing, honoring way. And that made a difference. All the difference in the world between living a slum life and all that was associated with it, and living a life that was able to move beyond that into a positive lifestyle. So things happen to us as we're children. Some of it can't be avoided. And sort of a major example of conditioning is a small child is playing, and a great big dog comes up and barks loudly at this child. And the dog is huge, and the dog may even be growling or even bite. And that's going to impact the child. The child is going to draw conclusions about their own vulnerability, as well as what big dogs can do. And that will likely mark that child for quite some time, unless there's some other conditioning to the contrary. But we have more subtle conditioning. People say things to us. It's a dreadful thing when a parent says, good boy or bad boy, or good girl or bad girl, because they're making a statement about the child, not about the behavior. And one of the fundamental beliefs in Buddhism is that everyone is perfect, whole, and complete, lacking nothing. But because we don't realize that, as the Buddha is supposed to have said at one point, we don't act like it. We get caught in greed, anger, and delusion. Even people who do bad things have at basis an inner perfection that they're not able to access. And that's why they do these bad things. Murder, thievery, whatever. So we are conditioned by the experiences we have growing up. We draw conclusions about ourselves. We develop what is known as a self-image. And that self-image, we are convinced, is real. And actually, it's not. And actually, it can be seen through. And when we can see through that self-image, there's a tremendous amount of freedom, because we're no longer driven to act in accordance with it. This is the work of our practice, to again and again allow ourselves to remain present in the given moment, searching also for who and what we really are, that true self. Master Rinzai has said, there's a true person of no rank going in and out of the doors of the senses. If you haven't seen it yet, see it now. See it now. And that is what we are doing with our practice. We are looking for that true person of no rank. He also added, in the eyes it is called seeing, in the ears it is called hearing, in the hands it is called grasping, in the tongues it is called tasting, in the feet it is called carrying us. What is that true person of no rank? A true person of no rank. No eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind. No color, sound, smell, taste, touch, or what the mind takes hold of, nor even active sensing. This is what it says in one of the profound teachings of the Buddha, the Prajnaparamita, the heart of perfect wisdom. It's a long haul, becoming aware of who we really are, letting go all the habit patterns of assumption about this false self. And yet, if we stay stuck in the false self, then we get embarrassed, we get angry, we get frustrated, because we believe we're something we're not. And we're driven like a puppet on strings to react to life instead of to respond to life. As we are able to become free, we begin responding rather than reacting. And our life changes. It becomes more free. It also becomes more aware, and in that greater awareness, we become more clearly, obviously attached to what we're attached to. And that can feel initially like we are becoming worse people because of the practice, but it is actually not the case. We're not becoming worse people. We're becoming more aware of what was already going on in our lives, what was already going on in our minds. The habit patterns of greed, anger, and delusion we were totally unaware of and only knee-jerking in reaction to. And we keep on in that process. Gradually we become more and more free. And life opens up. We find spaciousness and joy in our living. We find we're not so caught on things anymore. We find we have a great deal more freedom. We can be honest in our speech, in our thoughts. Or before we may have been speaking and thinking and acting as we assumed somebody else wanted us to think and speak and act. And that reality becomes authentic when we are true to ourselves. And our life becomes much less stressful as a result. When we're willing to face the moment as it is and tune in and feel the felt sense of it in our body, there is suddenly spaciousness around it, and we don't have to react. We are able to have clarity and access our innate wisdom and compassion and respond to the circumstances in a way that's more effective than if we were habitually reacting to it. And gradually, as a result, our karma changes as well. This is the gift of our practice. It takes a lot of hard work. It takes a lot of persistence. It takes a lot of walking into where we don't want to go, into pain, into unpleasant images of ourselves, into memories of behaving not so exemplary. But in order to become free, when it comes up, this is what we have to do. And we find as we do that we do become more and more free to be who we really are. The open, compassionate, wise human being that we were born as and always meant to be. So, there will be periods of discouragement. There will be periods of frustration. There will be periods when you get totally unmotivated to practice. But if you stick it out anyway, it's amazing the transformation that can happen. When I see my students working day after day, year after year, and I see the transformation they're able to bring forth in their lives, it is awe-inspiring. And you can do it too. Thank you for listening. We'll stop now and recite the